Welcome to the side event. How's everybody feeling today? Yeah? All right. My name is Andrew Jones, and I'm the co-director of Climate Interactive. And as you can read, this session is about meeting the goals of Paris through decision maker tools and climate education. And it's going to be a good session because it really is about rolling up our sleeves and seeing what it's going to take to deliver upon Paris goals. And I'm really happy that we've got two other good speakers with us who are going to share what they've been up to as well. Now, the premise of this session today is that decision makers are not going to address and solve this climate challenge sufficiently. Scientists aren't going to do it. Businesses alone aren't going to do it. It's going to take engagement of people around the world. We believe this is a time when we don't need 10,000 experts. We need 1 billion amateurs doing all they can effectively to make change. Not 10,000 experts, we need 1 billion amateurs. So if you believe that we do need all those people engaged in taking action effectively, you've come to the right side event. Because we have 3 organizations. To my left, this is Kenneth Nana Amoateng, who is with the Abibimman Foundation. They promote sustainable development using local knowledge. So we're going to hear from Kenneth about some of their work. And then to my right is Laura Hesse-Fischer with the MIT Center for Collective Intelligence. And that Center for the Collective Intelligence idea is tapping the power of those billion amateurs all around the world to come up with interesting solutions. So here we go. I'm going to get it over to Laura, and she's going to tell you first about their work at the Center for Collective Intelligence.
Great. Thanks, Andrew. Okay. Can you hear me from here? All right, great. So thank you for that wonderful introduction. And again, it's a pleasure to be here and be introducing to you the work that we're doing at MIT through the Climate CoLab project. Again, my name is Laura Hesse-Fischer, and I'm the project manager of the Climate CoLab. Now, how many people in this room have heard of Wikipedia? How many people have used Wikipedia? How many people use Wikipedia regularly? So, all the same number of hands showed up each time. So I work for the MIT Center for Collective Intelligence, as Drew had mentioned, and we study online collaborative platforms like Wikipedia and how they can be used to help address some of the most challenging and complex problems that our world is facing today. Now, some of you who are not familiar with Wikipedia, it completely changed the way that we share information around the world, and it was created by the contributions and from the contributions of over 80,000 unique people from all over the planet. And so I'm actually going to skip that part. But what I'm going to share is that I didn't come to the Center for Collective Intelligence because I am I'm a computer scientist. I almost said climate scientist, which I also am not. But I didn't come because I was a computer scientist. I came because I'm passionate about climate change, as everybody is here in the room today. As we all know, climate change is the most pressing problem that our world faces, and we haven't done nearly enough of what we know we need to do in order to effectively address it. So the Climate CoLab offers an online collaborative platform where a growing community of over 75,000 people from all around the world, including over 200 of the world's leading experts on climate change and related fields, can work together collaboratively online on creating solutions and plans on how to address global climate change. So our goal is about harnessing this collective intelligence of the billions to develop and evaluate proposals on how to address this issue. So people can participate on the Climate CoLab through a series of online contests that are interrelated. And you can work on the Climate CoLab in a number of different levels. So we have the global plan level, the national plan level, and the basic or the action level. So let me go through each of these briefly, starting with the basic or the action level. So here we run a series of contests, a dozen to 2 dozen every year, that are focused on different aspects of the climate change problem, from energy supply to waste management to transportation to land use and everything in between. It's a little small, but when you go to our website, you'll see our list of our contests look like this on the page. And we've actually broken down these sub-problems based largely on the IPCC report. And we provided a way for people to actually see how these problems are related to each other and search for the contests inside of each of these sub-problems. So we have people on the site who are proposing specific solutions to specific problems. And I'll talk a little bit more about what kinds of those solutions are in a few minutes. Now, on the national plan level, we actually invite people to participate in something that we call an integrated contest. Here, we're not asking for individual proposals or individual solutions. We're asking for people to actually combine different solutions in energy, in waste management, in transportation, in land use, and all of these different sub-problems into a comprehensive and detailed plan that could be applied at a national level. So we call these integrated proposals. And inside of a national plan, for one country, we will basically create spaces for all different countries, from every country from around the world, where people can actually combine these different proposals together to create integrated proposals for every single country on the planet. And so finally, on the global level, we run integrated contests where people can then combine the integrated proposals that are happening on a national level into a global plan, and then can actually look at, well, are these different action plans happening within these different countries actually add up to the kinds of targets that we're looking for on the global level, which we're all very familiar with. And so essentially what we're offering is, instead of having isolated meeting rooms where people are independently consulting with small groups of experts on how to address each of these problems, we really are opening up the national and international climate planning process to anyone around the world who wants to participate. So we do evaluation of every proposal that's submitted into one of our contests. So the judges will evaluate it based on novelty, feasibility, impact, and presentation. And each contest has a series of judges that do these evaluations. And what we're exploring now is how we can even use a crowd-based approach to do the evaluations of the proposals that are submitted onto the platform. So we've started this with impact. So we have a team that we call the Impact Assessment Fellows, and they'll actually work with the proposal to assess the and with reducing emissions. But we're hoping to expand this approach so that we can do analysis on different kinds of social feasibility, economic feasibility, political feasibility, impact on both adaptation and mitigation, and many others as well. So when we're talking about individual actions, we can calculate the impact in a specific region and a specific sector. And then we do this on the national and global levels. We actually use tools from Climate Interactive, which Drew will talk about in a few minutes, to assess the overall and much larger scale climate impacts of these national and global plans that users are creating and submitting onto the platform. And so we select, and our judges select, a series of winners each year to highlight some of the most compelling work that's happening in this area. And we invite them to MIT to present their work and to share it and introduce them to people who can help move things forward or clarify some certain spots. So these are some images of conferences that we've held at the past at MIT. And so who participates in this process? As I mentioned, we have a quickly growing network of over 75,000 people from all around the world. Almost every single country is represented. Most of them are graduates from college and university. In addition, we also have over 200 experts on climate change and related fields that participate as judges for the contest, but also participants in submitting proposals and commenting on the proposals that are there. And the people in this network are not just people focused on climate change. In fact, we've had many winners where this is their first foray into climate change. We've had some winners who have been software engineers, that have been health experts and doctors and architects. So I'm just going to share a few of the proposals that have come out of this initiative. On the global level, which we just piloted last year and the year before that, we had a proposal that actually suggested a world currency to price and finance carbon mitigation using a mechanism they called solar dollars. And they basically broke out how this could look in every country and how each country could implement it, and then how it would work together on an international level. And then for the United States, we piloted these regional contests last year. And one of the top proposals inside of that was about how cities could really lead the way, and creating low carbon cities was the way that the United States could help reach its climate goals. And on the basic or the action level, we've had a huge swath of proposals. We've had over 2,000 proposals submitted onto the platform. One of our grand prize winners last year was called the Sun Saluter, which is a low-cost passive solar tracker that would actually generate clean drinking water as the sun traversed across the sky. Or a campaign in India to engage students to then influence their parents on reducing energy. Or the Business Energy and Emissions Profile Dashboard, which is created by a company in Canada, in Vancouver, that is looking at how you can connect businesses and cities so they can share data with each other, so cities can track their businesses, the local businesses' carbon emission reductions, and incorporate those into their goals. So we've worked with quite a large number of organizations to run contests, not only in the general level, but also some specific challenges that these organizations are facing and challenged with. And one of the organizations that we're currently working with is the International Environmental Partnership. And that's a group with the US EPA, as well as Taiwan and Indonesia and Vietnam, Japan, and many other countries from around the world. And I'm happy that Dr. Jenny Shen is here. She's working collaboratively on this project with us, so thank you for being here. We also have a contest that's open right now that we're running in collaboration with the Secretary General's office. And we have some brochures outside about this as well. It's with the A2R initiative, which is Anticipate, Absorb, Reshape. And they're running a contest to get your ideas and your projects on how the most vulnerable countries can anticipate the climate hazards that they're going to face. And so we currently have 26 proposals submitted onto that platform, and it closes in February. So we welcome you to submit your ideas so that you can be part of this process of what this A2R initiative does. And so I want to thank you, and thanks, Drew, for organizing this panel, and thank you for having me here. The Climate CoLab and what we're doing, it shows that new technologies can make new things possible. And that's what we do at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. But not only more efficient solar panels or carbon capture technologies, but also new ways that the world can work together. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. Now we'll hear from Kenneth, and give me 1 second and we'll set up.
Wuse no yet me hayedi. Wose wuse ne ba bebre a na wani so bumi kwa mi tight na ha se na se mi ba mi timi pia bontin. Yo 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 yo. All right.
First time we gave it to a woman, her wood usage dropped from 2.9 kgs to 1.1 kg for the same meal. So we had it tested at the Cookstore Testing Center in Udaipur, and the results were 63% reduction in wood and 89% reduction in smoke.
Thank you for having me. Andrew says something that scientists cannot change it, but individual. In Ghana, we are about 22 million. And I believe Impress can do a lot of things. Our forest cover is going. So people use firewood. But how do you save them? For example, the smoke, it's killing the women that work in the kitchen. And you know, food is a thing that everybody needs to survive. And so with this Impress, it reduced smoke for about 60%. It reduced firewood for about 40%. And it cooked 60% faster. That is the magic. And that is what it can change our forest. So on this note, Abibimman Foundation is welcome everybody in your community. This is a local initiative that we are doing to save our planet. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Right now, Travis Franck is sending around a sign-up sheet. We'd love to get your email addresses and send you more information about all these, all the work here. So if you'd like to receive more from all of us, the links to the kinds of things that we're pointing to, just please write your name and your email address there. Also, because Laura Hesse-Fisher and her team at Climate CoLab are so generous, there are going to be snacks and refreshments right around the corner. So no matter how this goes, there will be refreshments afterwards. Also, the slides that we just put our slides up on the token. So if you see the token for this, come, you can get the slides there. All right, I'm part of Climate Interactive, and we are an organization that is creating tools for a thriving future. And our contribution today really is about empowering those billion people, those billion amateurs around the world who are making a difference, not the 10,000 experts, the billion amateurs. And the way we see doing that is at multiple levels. And I'm going to walk you through those levels and also really some things that we have to give you today. And at the end of it, if you're really inspired, we have slides and some of the tools that Grace Moara, who is right here. Grace, stand up and turn around so they see you. Come, she has some of these key drives which have a lot of our tools on them. They're at 4 levels. The first level is analysis. We've run a lot of numbers. We have these models that we built with MIT and out of MIT that give insights that are powerful. So one level is just insights, but that really doesn't work as much as we'd really like it to. So we give you the tools so that you can create many of those insights yourself on your own terms. Check the assumptions, make sure you really believe the analysis and make your own analysis. But that doesn't work really either, just you sitting in a computer running numbers. Learning and changing your heart and your mind about an issue as complex as climate change is a social experience. It happens in conversation with other people. So therefore, we embed the tools in interpersonal experiences that are often cathartic. That's the third level. And then even in an even deeper level, how do we think about this issue at all? Can we bring a systems thinking lens, what we call multi-solving, to capturing co-benefits around climate change? All right, 4 levels. Here's where we go. We're funded by some wonderful foundations, and we have wonderful partners such as MIT Sloan. Here are some of the other foundations. Analysis. So the analysis that we do, the most famous, who's seen this number of 3.5 or this image? Have you seen this before, this analysis? This is the analysis that we started sharing in Copenhagen. We call it the climate scoreboard. And what it says is that we're not headed towards 4.5 degrees C of warming, which is where we would go if we did nothing about climate change. Instead, we calculated that if we follow all the pledges to Paris, we would have a better world. Not to the Paris goals yet, but 3.5 degrees of warming. This is better, but insufficient. Where we need to get, of course, is well below 2 degrees with an effort to reach 1.5. That is what the green line at the bottom shows. So one thing to do is when you come home and they say, how are the pledges going? They're making all these pledges to address climate change. You can say, we've made progress, we have further to go. And this slide and this image, which is on the climate scoreboard, will show you we have made progress, but we have further to go. The most recent analysis that we are going to share, we hope on Wednesday, is how much further we have to go and how mid-century strategies by countries are going to help. What we did is we said, well, let's run our model many, many times and see what it takes to get to the Paris goals. So I hope you can see over here, these colored lines. You see those light blue? If our emissions from 2000 to 2100 don't follow no action, and they don't just follow the Paris pledges, but after C25, 2025, 2030 right here, if we follow mid-century strategies for decarbonization and drop on the order of 80 to 95% by 2050, then we're able to get well below 2. The blue line area is for 1.9, here's 1.8 in red, and on and on. And then we said, if there are 15 regions of the world, what would they need to do with their mid-century strategies? We calculated, for example, where I come from in the United States, the US mid-century strategy would need to follow this kind of trajectory after the INDC that takes us to 2025. That INDC is 26 to 28% below 2005 by 2025. And then we would follow one of these trajectories, 4% a year, 5, 6, 7, 8. You're seeing 600 different scenarios. Now, that only works to get us to Paris goals if other countries have mid-century strategies that are similarly aggressive. For example, China would need to peak, by our calculations, 2025 to 2030, and then drop 5% a year, 6, 7, or 8. And there are many different scenarios to get there. This is the envelope within which the mid-century strategy would need to fall to meet Paris goals. And in the same way we did the calculation for Mexico, it's particularly relevant. I don't know if anyone else heard a minister from Mexico today saying that on Wednesday, the day after tomorrow, they're going to announce their mid-century strategy. So it kind of comes to mind, well, is it going to be sufficient to keep us well below 2 degrees? What we think, we don't know this, but there is national legislation, and it could be that they could say we're going to be 50% below 2000 by 2050. That's what that line is right there, the green line, beyond their INDC. And if so, we're calculating the lines that are more dim around it right now are the range of possibilities that would be consistent with below 2 degrees. So you can see it seems to be consistent, and it would deliver upon the Paris goals if all the other 193 countries do significant action. So this is the kind of analysis we're trying to share to give the world an idea of what it's going to take and how we can do it to address climate change. So the call to action here, our first offer is share this analysis, share an image like this that says we've made progress and we have further to go. However, my thesis advisor and mentor, John Sturman, who is on our team and one of the professors at MIT, said it well. He was in a meeting just last week with the Secretary General of the UN, Ban Ki-moon, and he said this quote, and it's very clearly put: research shows that showing people research just doesn't work. I'll say it again slowly because it's a kind of a funny turn of phrase in English. Research shows that showing people research just doesn't work. Has anyone else had that experience? Right? Here's my research, so go change your behavior. No, it doesn't work that way. We need to chew upon the analysis. We need to handle it on our own terms. Therefore, we're here to give you tools. And the first tool that we want to give you is our new software. And this is the most widely used climate simulator in the world, we think right now. I can't prove that, I'm sorry. We think it is because it's been used by so many hundreds of thousands of people around the world as they run different scenarios. What you're looking at runs on a PC or a Mac, and it is very fast. It runs in less than a second, and it shows 6 regions of the world. It could also show 3 or just 1. You type in what you think the reduction rates will be, what the peaking years will be, and quite immediately it will recalculate what the temperature rise would be by 2100 and the graph for temperature over on the far right. You should download it, check it out, run your own scenarios. And importantly, if there's a moment when you think, you know, I'm a little concerned that these guys aren't using the assumptions that I think are appropriate. I think, say, the sensitivity of the climate to a doubling of carbon shouldn't be 3. It should be 3.5 or 2.5. You can change those assumptions in the model, which is very helpful when you're really trying to test your own thinking and your own understanding. So the call to action is download this model or come to Grace and she will give you a thumb drive that will send you to the website where you can go play with it yourself. All right, so giving you analysis, give tools, but sitting at a computer is not how we change hearts and minds. As I said before, learning and changing our behavior is a social phenomenon. It has to happen in conversation with other people. So what we did is we took the model and embedded it in a role-playing exercise called World Climate. And our tagline is, your turn to negotiate. What happens is someone like me stands up and says, I'm the Secretary General of the UN. You are all the parties. I would break you up into 6 teams. European Union, other developed like Russia and Japan and so on, China, India, and other developing. It has to be dramatic. So we ask the least developed countries to sit on the floor. I asked the president of Micronesia to sit on the floor once. He did it. He was fine. It's a powerful experience when there are people, one group has a box of croissants because they're the wealthy countries. The people who are poor are sitting on the floor. And then I say, negotiate. You have 30 minutes to solve this problem, or an hour and a half if you have the time. And every time people put a pledge forward, we type it into the model and we see, did you solve the problem? Here's what it looks like. It looks like people in conversation, in vigorous conversation with each other. This is this year in Africa. Actually, Grace, do you know which country this is? This is in Nigeria, just last month or so. Do you see, these are people running a simulation model. You don't usually see people running a simulation model looking like this. This is what it takes to learn with deep analysis. Here's another setting. Grace, do you know which one this one is? This is in Kenya, where Grace is from. This is in Indonesia, and I told you about the people on the floor. These are the least developed countries sitting on the floor planning how they're going to gain power in this simulated negotiation. This was a couple months ago. I ran this for 5th, 6th, and 7th graders in my hometown. They get this. They can run the simulate and participate as well. This is John Sturman after we run the first scenario, and they move from 4.5 degrees C down to, say, 3.8. And we calculate sea level rise, and it's still about a meter. We take a blue tarp and spread it over the people sitting on the ground and all the others to simulate what it may feel like with sea level rise. We need visceral, powerful experiences that taps our hearts as we're learning with our brains about what the dynamics of this complex system really is. Importantly, we ground all of the pledges in the science. Right here, you see some students writing the pledges on a chalkboard, and then we type it into the computer to see if it really helps. We're excited that as we prepared to come here, 499 events in 64 countries with 28,000 participants. We just posted this. Friends translated it into 8 languages. Grace, is that number right? Travis? Many languages. It's probably in yours. So, and then gave it away. Their training materials, a facilitator guide that are all online. Since we've been here, and just over the last couple months, I think we've run 6 events here at the COP in the area, over at area universities. And now we're up to 530 events, 30,646 events as of this morning. People engaging other people with rigorous visceral simulations. And we had this opportunity with the university, with UM6P, a regional university, to run the event around Africa. In the last 6 months, 7,000 participants, 49 world climate events with UM6P. So the call to action, the first one is to use the analysis. The second one was to go use the tools. This one is to create an experience where you can engage other people to think and find that voice inside themselves to be climate leaders at whatever level is appropriate. I said we have a lot of tools, but really, can we affect how we even think about and approach this challenge? Can we use more of a systems lens? We have a movement and a effort led by Dr. Beth Sawin and Stephanie McCauley here at Climate Interactive called MultiSolving. And we define that as the search for systemic solutions that protect the climate while improving health, equity, and well-being. Because we know that all the near-term benefits of climate is much broader than keeping healthy ecosystems that work because of the climate effects. Instead, they're in, or as well, they're also in other areas. Food and water, jobs and assets, resilience, energy industry and mobility, connection, health. And anybody who knows what's been going on, say, in New Delhi over the last month or so knows the air quality impacts. If we're able to move beyond fossil fuels, address air quality, this is a significant improvement to health, not just climate. There are co-benefits to taking action on climate. If we want to capture them, though, we need to design for them. MultiSolving is a framework for thinking about how to design for those co-benefits, how to think in systems so we reap all of those benefits as we address this challenge. And as we think about it, we also need to appreciate that, particularly in the agricultural area, there are multiple goals that we have, not just climate. So Dr. Travis Franck, who's actually standing over there, Travis, wave at everybody. So if you're interested in climate smart agriculture, so with climate smart agriculture, we ask the question, can we address climate in agriculture, that is, address the emissions that are over on the right? You see greenhouse gas emissions from agriculture over on the right. This happens to be a case study we're doing on Ethiopia. And using simulation modeling to address emissions in Africa, in Ethiopia in this case, but also address keeping the food availability up. So you see over on the left, where we want to make sure that we meet food availability and greenhouse gas reductions, as well as the third pillar, which is the resilience to climate change. That's the work of it. Talk to Travis if you're interested in more. So overall, there it is. We're giving you 4 things. Some analysis, go and spread the word. Some tools, think for yourself using the tools that we have. And engagement mechanisms socially so that you can engage other people around these issues. And then a paradigm of multi-solving. Can we think holistically about these issues and address climate change and the many other things that we care about? Overall, we can do this. It's not going to be easy. It's going to be worth it. Thank you. Okay. Well, there's our overview. We heard about the 3 efforts from our 3 organizations. And how did we do? Do we have time? We have a good bit of time for conversation and questions. And so anybody? Yes, sir. Right up front. And I'll say before, take that before you have. If there's anyone who does need to leave early and you would like some of the slides, again, use the Poken. Grace, who's over there, has some copies of the slides as well. So if you talk to her or talk to Travis. And their brochures over there on the right. So yes, sir.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much for this amazing bottom-up presentation. I was just at the big 23 countries mission innovation there with the big state and the big governments, but I really like this because it's more working with entrepreneurs and small people and young people actually making a difference. My question is, how do we work with people in least developing countries like Myanmar, for example, that's just opening up after so long in a military dictatorship? And we are working with farmers by the sea and doing blue carbon farming, because sea level will rise whether we like it or not. But what kind of crops can grow in saline water? So if you have any other people working on that, like there are sea asparagus, potatoes that the Dutch are working, and even soya beans that can grow by the sea. So that when those rice fields are all full of saline water, maybe addressing food security in the future could be a way out. But we've also planted 2 million mangrove trees in the last 2.5 years in the Arawati Delta, which is the storm-hit area. And the government said, here's 80,000 hectares more to restore. So I'm trying to find resources to plant another 320 million trees. I will sequester at least the same amount of ton. But mangroves are quite efficient because they store 5 times more carbon. But it's not just about the carbon, it's about the lives it would protect as a natural barrier, the storms up to 150 miles per hour, and the fish that is born out of mangroves. So if you calculate the ecosystem services, it's in the billions. UNEP did a calculation of the mangroves in the west of Africa, and the services it provides for those countries is $66 billion. Wow. So that's a lot. But NASA data shows 50% of mangroves are gone. So how about restoring the 50% that are gone and create millions of green jobs for young people in these least developing countries, which is the most vulnerable, and using the technology from MIT to power these low-income economies to create green jobs for those young people.
Wow. Thank you. You have anything to say?
Yeah. I guess I'll use this one. Great. Well, thank you for that powerful message and also sharing what Myanmar is doing to address climate change. What I can say is I think we're just in the beginning of seeing what the internet is, what we're able to do using the internet. And one of the huge initiatives, as we all know, internationally, is providing more internet access for people to get connected and get online. And so a lot of the work that happens on the Climate CoLab happens in the virtual space because we believe in the power of the internet to be able to connect people specifically around climate change. So regarding this, I mean, if we can get these people access to internet, they can see the huge collections of actions that are happening all around the world, and the people who are doing those actions, who are trying to help move forward on these different kinds of climate initiatives. So by opening up these kinds of more slower in-person meetings that might take time to actually have those connections happen, the internet actually allows those connections to happen in a much more rapid way with many, many more people. So our approach is, let's open up the process, let's make it collaborative and transparent online so people can connect.
Thank you.
In terms of the mangroves, a lot of people use mangroves for firewood, and so they use for fishmongers. And so with interest, we'll be able to save a lot of it. So maybe after that we can talk about it. It's because of the firewood. Yeah.
Charcoal. You remember 10 minutes ago, I talked about this idea of multi-solving, looking for systemic solutions and multiple benefits. I think this gentleman said it much better than I, a really concrete example of exactly that. Finding solutions such as this idea of restoring lands in coastal areas that makes an area more resilient to extreme weather events, to flooding, that allows there to be fish to support ecosystems, which is also part of supporting food and the local economies as well, and growing more trees. So these are the kinds of things that we don't think of just one by one, but we think as a whole system. And we're trying to learn from examples like that and share these stories with more people so that we can find them no matter what domain we're applying this idea of multi-solving to. So thank you very much for that example. That's, we should write that one down. Are there other questions and comments? Yes, ma'am, in the front. Hold on one second. So here comes Travis with the mic.
Thank you. I'm Jenny Jen from Taiwan, Taipei, and I'm very pleased to be here. And I have the privilege to thank Lower. We have the environmental partnership, especially on the media collab, to watch how the experts' view of adaptation. But today I have some question about climate Act. That is about the multi-solving of the environmental issues, especially the co-benefit of air pollution and the climate change issues, and how to encourage different competent authority to work together or encourage them to think together to have the new thinking of solving the different aspect problems, because each one have their position, the health of the department, the environment, the economic, the energy sector have different view of the their business. How to have encourage them to think together, have the new thinking and change their behavior to combating the climate change, but can have the same benefit. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. So I'm hearing the question is, when you have multiple organizations and multiple groups that have a very different perspective on something like air quality, how do you proceed? And this is such a big challenge. We're running into this in our multi-solving work right now. We're doing a project in Atlanta, Georgia, in the southeast part of the United States. And what my colleagues, I'm not doing this work directly, but what I'm hearing from them, from Beth Sawan and Stephanie McCauley, is that a lot of it has to do with convening the right people and giving non-traditional people a seat at the table. For a long time, we would say, oh, climate is an issue for the environmentalists, and air is a different issue over here that's handled by some part of the city. And then community development and energy, and all of these different components actually need to be talking together. And in particular, in the United States at least, bringing in the voices of the most vulnerable, the people who are being adversely affected by the air quality itself. So a lot of it is that power of who are the people who are designing the processes whereby people listen to each other, and are we able to give enough power and voice to the people who we traditionally don't think of as handling SOx and NOx and air pollutants, but are really living the impacts of it because of kids not being able to go to school, for example, because of asthma and other impacts like that. So I would encourage us all to think about who's at the table, who's able to convene a conversation amongst very diverse partners. Would either of you have something more to say?
Said very well.
Okay. Yes, sir, in the middle. And wait 1 minute and you'll get a microphone.
I'm William Ngoma from South Africa. One of the slides showed that we are working with people who are graduates. And the question is, how do you accommodate those that have got lower or no qualifications at all? Because they might also be able to send out the message.
That might have been a slide. I think that was a slide on about the people who are involved in the Climate CoLab.
Yes.
Yes, absolutely. So the Climate CoLab
Could you
is
restate the question?
absolutely. So the question was around, if I'm representing it accurately, it was that most of the people on the Climate CoLab are graduates from college and from university. And what can we do to engage far more people who haven't been able to achieve that level of education? So thank you for that question. And I think, Drew and my friend Kenneth here will have a lot to say about this as well, but we do need everybody at the table. We don't need just the most educated people. We need everybody at the table. And in all of our initiatives, it brings people together who are at all different levels of education. In fact, actually, on the Climate CoLab, which is open for anyone to participate in, if you have an internet connection, then you can log into the Climate CoLab, create a free account, and participate. You can submit a proposal and have it be reviewed by others. People can comment on it. It can be considered as one of the winning proposals. We've had people win contests on the Climate CoLab. We had a high school student win last year, which has never happened before. We have postdocs, yes, and researchers, but we have people from all walks of life who participate. So it's certainly not at all limited. And in fact, we think tools like this, especially with younger generations that are more comfortable with using online tools, can actually help engage these people, about people from all all kinds of education from all around the world more effectively in these kinds of conversations than has happened before.
For Climate Interactive in Ghana, we use the local language because when they were training us, they let us also use a local language because you need the local community. You can't give them a science, but using the local language, they understand more and they are familiar with it. Thank you.
Could you show the slide that I've got queued up here? And so just to bring us back to the kinds of conversations we need are not going to be about much the science, atmospheric science of the biogeochemistry of the climate anymore. That was COP 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It was very important foundationally. Now it's going to be people talking to each other about how we can address a very important issue. And so we want to make these ideas accessible to everybody. And my experience just a month ago with this kid who was, he's not very good at math. I know this kid. He was very effective at making change in a complex social situation. Here he's pointing to somebody and trying to get them to come along with a position of to peak emissions in 2030 instead of 2035 and reduce. He used some of the numbers, but the basic part of it was how to speak and be articulate and powerful, speaking from the heart and speaking from the brain, which is really not about your education. It is really about your ability to be a human in really trying times, which is what this challenge is really asking us to do. All right, so another question, another comment. Yes, over here.
Hi, I work for the National Trust in the Cayman Islands, and I would just like to suggest if it's possible to be able to try to get some of those ovens that you've got there to Haiti, to our neighbor. I know they could really use that technology.
So let's get the ovens to Haiti.
Yes,
thank you.
Yeah, the whole ecosystems have been devastated because of fuel wood, so that would be great. What's the name of those things, by the way?
What are those?
So what's the name of the?
It's Empress, but we give it a local name as Abibimman Foundation. India have a different name for it.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Yes, other questions, other comments? Yes, in the front. And we can cut the slide, please. Go ahead.
Thank you for your time, and the discussions is very interesting. I just would be interested to hear a little bit more about the invention from Ghana and how that actually works in relation to producing wood stocks.
So the question is, he'd like to hear more about what you've got there, how it works, and yeah.
Okay, so you put this into the local cook stove, okay, and you put the firewood on top of it, and the ashes go down here, and so it does not produce a lot of smoke. There is air around this area. Also, basically, that is how it works.
Thank you. Other questions and comments?
Let me ask a question.
Can I-
How many people here have participated in the World Climate
Has anyone played the World
Climate game? All right, so when do you have your next one? Isn't it? It's right after this, isn't it? So right after this, they actually are having a World Climate. I highly recommend it. I've gone to one at COP last year. It is emotional. It is recommend it. And then anything else you want to say about that?
No, I think
Actually,
if we go ahead. Yeah, Travis.
so it is 5 o'clock. I think we only have an hour and a half. If we can go long, we'll try. At 5 o'clock in the green zone. Grace, do you remember the room for the green zone?
What? You could. I'm gonna say something about that.
I didn't hear the name. DRKA? AA. Oh, draw. Okay. So yes. So like the rains. And in the green zone. And also tomorrow night, tomorrow night, where I'm presenting the Climate Smart Ag tool in the green zone in the Agora. C400 is the space. It's right in one of the initial buildings there near the AAA initiative. So we have another side event tomorrow to talk about the Climate Smart Ag tool that we're unveiling here this week and where that's going in 2017. And that's a conversation. So we'd love to have your input to take about that. That's 5:30 tomorrow evening, 5:30 to 7, C400 in the green zone.
Great. Excellent. I think there's going to be, oh, do you have a question? Sorry, question? Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, sorry, question, please.
Hold on. Yeah.
Which of the ideas that they've come up with do you believe have the most impact and would be ones that we should consider immediately? Because I believe we don't have as long as that continuum. I think we work with students around the world from 12 to 18, and we want to share with them some of your good ideas about how they can start taking action.
Yeah, great. Well, I highly recommend for everyone to check out the kinds of proposals that are submitted on the Climate CoLab. It's a huge range of work. And I gave just a few examples, but we have, people are suggesting policy mechanisms. They're suggesting NGO projects. They're suggesting new technologies and new business frameworks. It's incredibly broad. And I would say that there's a lot of opinions about what the most important kinds of projects are. And on the Climate CoLab, you have such a huge scale of work that's being done. People who want to work across an entire country, and people who just want to work in one neighborhood, in one city to make a difference with people. So it's really incredible. And I very much agree with Drew when he was saying this, and it's something that I hear a lot, is we need to make sure that we're creating the best net result for people with any kind of action that we're doing, especially regarding, and when we're looking at climate change, we want to make sure whatever actions we take regarding climate change also fit with the other SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals. And we want to make sure that we're creating an equitable people and society as well as a safe planet. So I'd say those are the solutions that we want to see, make sure that cross-sectorally they're taking care of both our planet and our people. So thank you for that question. And I also want to ask a question to the audience. So how many people here have a project or have an initiative, an organization that they're working on that they want to be recognized as part of a national plan in their country? Something they want to be seen as part of the National Climate Action Plan? And how many people, maybe you don't have one of your own, but you know of one, you know of a project, a plan, a technology, or something that you think should be incorporated in a national climate plan in your country? Everyone's got to know at least something, right? That should be, yeah. So that is what the Climate CoLab is about. It's about using your knowledge, the things that you want to see be implemented, have a voice and have a say and have a place. So I invite you to submit those projects, submit those organizations, submit those technologies or those policy ideas onto the Climate CoLab so they can be part of a crowdsourced climate action planning initiative. So I invite you to do that on our website, which is climatecolab.org. Now I think I'm turning it back over to Drew.
So we have just enough time to do a very shortened version of the exercise that I was just talking about. So if you're game, will you roll? And we're going to shift into a kind of a different mode here. I'm getting a few nods. A woman in the front nodded. Are you with me? Going to try this? All right. Here's what we're going to do. We have another 30 minutes at the most. So here's what we're going to do. Grace, would you be the technical advisor to the United Nations? Please come up. You call up the software that's showing right now. So what we're going to do in 30 seconds, I'm going to shift gears for a second, and I'm not going to be a presenter from Climate Interactive, and you're not going to be people at a conference. You're going to be the delegates over in the plenary hall negotiating the pledges, not just the INDCs, but the mid-century strategies to the United Nations as part of the Framework Convention, okay? And we're going to be 3 parts of the world. Over here in the front, you in this corner are going to be the most developed countries: United States, European Union, Japan. Pardon? You're welcome. She said thank you. You're going to be Australia, Canada, etc. And if this isn't your part of the world, that's a particularly good exercise. You get to see what it's like wearing another pair of shoes. In the back is going to be the what we're calling in this world developing A. This is China and Brazil, South Africa, Mexico, Indonesia, the faster growing developing countries. All of you there. Over on the right, these are going to be the least developed countries. We're calling them developing B over in the context of our simulator. It's going to be much of Africa, much of Asia, much of South America. And you're going to be making pledges to us, and we're going to be typing it into this model. Okay? The way it's going to work, and we're going to type it in the model.
Okay, yeah, maybe it's.
Are you game? Someone say yes, yeah? All right, what the heck? What the heck? All right, here we go. Okay. Welcome, everybody. I am the Secretary General of the UN, and I invite you to solve the climate change problem in 10 minutes. Here we go. What we're going to do is think about what year each of you can imagine peaking emissions. If you don't peak emissions, they're going to grow like this. Look over here. See the blue line? This is fossil fuel emissions, 2000 to 2100. You all in the front, okay? These are your emissions that you control. They would be growing steadily throughout the century. In the back, you all, China and India, Indonesia, etc., your emissions are growing faster, the green line, but they will be leveling out over time. Your emissions here are much lower. The yellow line, do you see the yellow line over right here? Emissions growing more slowly. Add them all up, add in all of the other greenhouse gas emissions, and then temperature would be growing to 4.5 degrees. You see the number big, and you also see the dotted lines are the Paris goals of below 2 degrees and 1.5. So what year could you imagine peaking emissions? Turn to someone next to you. Really, even if you don't know each other, you're going to meet, turn to someone next to you and say, we can imagine peaking emissions in, turn to me and talk. You have 3 minutes. Confer with your parties. In the back, you're talking to each other. You're thinking about what year. All you need to do is come up with a year. Okay, that's all the time you get. All right. Developed countries. What year? Throw out some years. 2030. Any other position? 2030? 2030? Okay, hold on a second. So 2030. So what we're going to do is before you hit, so Grace, the technical advisor, has just typed in the number, and she's going to hit tab in a second. Watch the blue line on the left. Do you see the blue line on the left? So hit it. There it goes. And do you just see it peak? Oh. If there's a peak in 2030, then do you notice what happened to the temperature? Yeah, it dropped a little bit. How much? Did anyone notice the math? 0.3 degrees.
Wow.
Is this a better world? Slightly. It's better. It does not solve the problem. If all that happens is that developed countries peak in 2030, then we have a somewhat better 0.3 degrees C better world. Where did I hear from you all? The same. You said 2030 as well, and that matches what China has said in their actual INDC. So let's try there. So watch the green line and watch what happens if we peak emissions in 2030. How much did that get us? Another half a degree, right? So now we're at 3.7. If the developing A, the fast-growing countries, peak in 2030. Okay, over here, if this is what you hear from them, you all are dealing most directly with the effects of climate change. What do you think? What are some years? And this could be anyone all the way to back. I want to hear a couple numbers. What do you think? Okay, so two positions. I need to hear both numbers. You're saying what? She said 2020. You said 2075. And in the back? 2040. 2020, 2075, 2040. I'm going to pick it in the middle. 2040 wins for now. All right, so type in 2040. And wait, before you hit it.
Oh, sorry.
No, you're all right. Oh, okay, that's okay. So if there's a peak, you see the yellow line peaking in 2040. add it all up, we run it through a carbon cycle, calculate temperature, and the result is 3.5 degrees C of warming. It happens that is exactly our calculation of the INDCs. So in some sense, you created the first 22 years of negotiations for pledges in 12 minutes. Good job. All right, give yourself a hand. Okay, so we've made progress. We have further to go. Remember I said that an hour ago? We've made progress. We have further to go. So the second question, in what year reducing emissions? What year can you, and then how fast? And when I say how fast, it could be 1% a year, 2% a year, 3%, 4%. Northern Europe was able to sustain 10 years of reducing emissions 4 to 5% a year in the 1970s after the oil crisis. That's just to give you a little sense of how fast, if we stop investing in new fossil fuel infrastructure and we just let it all retire away, then emissions drop about 5% a year. Okay? Now, mind you, we've left out the Green Climate Fund here. And when we really play the game, that is a big part of this. Would you guys be asking for money from the Green Climate Fund if we were doing a real negotiation? Yes. Okay. We're not doing that in the short version, but just let me name that this is not the responsibility 100% of the developing countries to do what they're about to type in. We're just trying to get a sense of what it would take. Okay, so turn to someone next to you. What year can you peak? What year can you start reducing? Turn to the person next to you and like, what year? What year can you start reducing and how fast? Okay, developed countries. In what year can you reduce emissions and how fast? 2040, 2%. 2040, 2%. Anybody else have a dissenting view? 2040, 2%. Okay, before she types it in, before she clicks forward, I want you to run your mental model. All decisions are made with models. All decisions. Most of them are in our heads. You probably have an idea of how much that temperature is going to come down if in 2040 you start seeing the line come down at 4%. Maybe you think it's going to get to 1.6 degrees C. Is it going to get to 1.6? No. Is it going to get to 2? Is it going to get to 3? Notice that the emissions are pretty low, but so think in your head, I think the number is going to come down to, just think. Okay, now type it. Technical advisor, here she goes. 2%. Watch it drop. It drops 2% down to 3.3. 2% is a pretty modest change. And we're waiting all the way to 2040, right? We're not talking about like Christiana Figueroa has just started an effort to say we need to peak global emissions in 2020. We're waiting to reduce emissions in 2040. So we shouldn't be surprised that we only get 3.3. Okay. Developing A in the back. What year can you begin reducing your emissions and how fast? 2050, she says. 2050 and how fast? 2050 and how fast? 1%. Okay, what if, now run your mental model. What if we wait to reduce emissions in the developing world, in Indonesia and in Brazil and in Mexico and in South Africa, China, India? What if we wait till 2050 and then we drop, the curve is going to look a little less steep than the blue line, 1% a year. So it's really an important question. If we really don't get much steep reduction out of the developing world, can we get to the Paris goals? What do you think? No, says the gentleman who was talking about mangroves earlier. No. Anybody thinks it will? Run your mental model. Here we go. Okay, type it in. Technical advisor, what do we got? 3.1. 3.1. We're seeing what is required. And the math here, the scientists have been talking about for 20 years, right? It takes a peaking around 2020 and then dropping on the order of 4 to 6% globally. So you understand with that peaking in 2020, we're pushing this out a while. We shouldn't be surprised that we get 3.1 at this point. But we got this. Let's keep trying. Folks, can you imagine that you, developing B, the most vulnerable nations of the world, Africa, much of Asia, South America, are you willing to reduce emissions? And if so, how fast? 2020, very fast. Okay, this was you were the high ambition coalition in the front of this group, and the mid ambition coalition in the middle. What do you all think? What year? Do we have another? Yeah, another opinion. Someone had a different. 2040, and how fast? 2040 and 4. 2020 and 5, was it? 2020 and 4. Anyone in the back? The woman, yes? 1% in 2030. He's nodding. All right. So this would be the least developed countries moves ahead of the fast growing nations and says 2031. Well, or 2 is in the middle of all these. So 2030 and 2. 2% a year. Oh, so you're peaking. So the peak would have to now be, the peak year would be 2030, and the reduction year would be 2030. So watch the yellow line as we peak earlier, and watch the reduction in 2030. 2031. Sounds good. And then 2% a year. Watch it. Ooh, sorry about that. So now 2.9. You notice there's no silver bullet. There's no one of these pledges that just solves the problem absolutely. Instead, it is action in many different areas. But we're below 3 degrees at this point. Yes, Dr. Franck.
So what does this mean for impacts? I'm really worried about the coastlines because those mangroves are going underwater.
Very good. So so far you've just seen temperature, which is really a proxy, but there are many other things that matter. Let's go over and you pause right there, and you can see that you can see many different factors that are impacts. And if you scroll down to sea level rise, and you can see that the black line was the business as usual. The purple line, under 3 degrees, we still get significant sea level rise. As you have all heard from scientists, the impacts of climate change are well delayed from both emissions, atmospheric concentrations, and temperature. It takes a long time for those impacts to benefit from all of the action we create in reducing emissions. We've said this scientifically, now you get to see it for real. Yes.
There's not only reducing emissions, but there are sinks that can be created with
oh, what a good point.
In particular, if all agriculture were biochar or 4 per thousand regenerative, you could neutralize all current emissions.
So the comment is, and this is very important, that there aren't just emissions that are driving climate change and reducing emissions, but we can also increase removals. And that's because we need to think about atmospheric carbon. This is the stuff that is trapping heat. It's like a blanket over Earth. It's like a bathtub. And what's flowing in the bathtub is emissions. What's flowing out are net removals. If we increase the net removals, as the woman is suggesting, carbon dioxide removal, then we would have less CO2 in the atmosphere and less temperature. And there are many ways: bioenergy, carbon capture and storage, agricultural soil carbon, as the woman mentioned as well. One thing that we've added to this model is equivalent in the model, at least, and similar, which is afforestation, which is trees through photosynthesis capture more carbon. And so IASA and other groups have modeled what would be the impact of increasing afforestation in 3 parts of the world. When we have a longer time to negotiate, we ask you to make pledges there, but let's do that right now. So what I'm going to ask you to do, not the deforestation, let's focus on increasing removals. So go over to afforestation, and if we type in 100%, so we maximize all the developed country afforestation that's potential there, and in developing A, you all growing a lot of trees, and over here, also in developing B, and then did you hit go yet? And where was it before? It was 2.9. This drops us down to 2.7. So in the overall issue, someone said it well yesterday. I heard them say this, that we need to fight for every 1/10 of a degree. And this is great because more removals got us 2/10 of a degree, which is very important when you're trying to get well below 2 from 3. The scale that's possible, though, many people from our calculations believe that the scale of removals that can be increased is much greater than we are finding when we look at the studies. It is a contribution, but it is in no way a silver bullet that could actually balance out the fossil fuel emissions because the scale is so significant of burning coal, oil, and gas. Instead, it is an important contribution that can help us get there. We need to not look for it as magic. Yes, Dr. Franck.
So and I'll also just add, this is exactly what we want to have happen, is we want to have good questions. We want to be able to use the simulator. So this is what happens during the role play, is they're either negotiating or they're talking about it. And this is that visceral experience. And we can talk about the issues, talk about what your mental model is. You know, 4 per mile is a positive initiative, and we should do that. And discuss then, is it not? Under what circumstances would it be, or what circumstances would it be not? And then we can also show data from our model, which is if you showed the carbon removals, the bathtub model on the left, please.
Oh, yes.
The second graph.
CO2 and emissions and removals, the second one.
We can talk about why these are happening. So here we actually present some of the data, and if we were to undo the afforestation policies that we put in place, that green line would rise back above. And so the number one thing we start this conversation when it comes around to carbon dioxide and removals is just a simple acknowledgement that we are putting in twice as much carbon in the atmosphere than the Earth can remove through its natural ecosystems. So we have a lot of reduction. And anytime we switch graphs.
Yeah, I moved over to something else.
Okay.
Yeah.
At any time, thank you. And anytime that green line is above the gray line, that the faucet is turned on faster than the drain of the bathtub can remove emissions, then the level in the bathtub goes up, which is saying atmospheric concentrations of CO2 is going up, which means temperatures rising and the Earth is not stabilized. So again, we're using the simulator to talk about all this stuff.
Great.
And the conversation is really what it should be now, which is you asking us questions and getting into it.
So I imagine if we had another 30 minutes and you were able to talk to each other, as we do in a real game, you would eventually come up with a scenario that Grace is typing in right now, which is, given what our understanding of the carbon cycle, what it takes, and this has been published many, many times over the last 30, 40 years, what it takes to actually deliver upon warming well below 2 degrees. And you can see in the developed countries, peaking emissions in actually developed countries now, and then reducing emissions by 2024, 2% a year, 100% of afforestation in this scenario. Developing A, peaking in 2021, reducing 2028, 2% a year. It gets us 3 degrees. Oh, get me below, the goal is below 2. Just give me a little bit more, Grace. What you're seeing is what it really takes. And this is what's come out of the science, and many scientific groups from Europe and the US and all over the world have concluded we need to peak emissions around 2020. We need them to drop 2 to 5% a year and maximize all of the removals that we can deliver. This is what we get to do and reap all the co-benefits that would come from this amazing transition away from fossil fuels and the restoration of our lands. Overall, it's a challenge. You can see just the dynamics even between starting to think about these groups of people in the world. And yet, we believe that we are up to this challenge. Overall, I said it earlier, it's not going to be easy, but it's going to be worth it. So thank you for playing this game, and give yourself a hand for diving in. This is not a typical side event for the way that you were able to dive in. It was great. Oh, thank you. She said it was great. Okay.
I think we have
10 minutes.
Questions.
We have 10 minutes. And actually what I'd like to do, if possible, Laura and Kenneth, if you have any comments or reflections on this, given the context of what you're all doing, this is very consistent with some of what you have. What would you like to comment about this
Great.
experience?
Yeah, I mean, I hope you really enjoyed that experience. Every time I participate in one of these, I always learn something else, and especially am challenged by how difficult it really is to do this, especially if you think about the specific actions that are needed in order to do some of these things, right? To peak emissions, to actually implement the reductions, to prevent deforestation, to promote afforestation. And so what we do in the Climate CoLab, and this is why our projects work so well together, is we actually outline, and we invite you to outline, what specific actions can help achieve these results, and actually combine different kinds of actions together to see, okay, are we reaching the 100% afforestation? Are we reaching 2% reductions? Are we getting there yet? So you're actually able to work, this is on a high level, right? You're actually able to work on the Climate CoLab on a project and policy level. So, and that helps feed some of the results that are here. And this, of course, becomes all the more important now as countries are rapidly looking at how to implement their NDCs and their commitments, and also what might be necessary in the lack of national leadership in some cases as well, inviting subnational actors to be able to self-organize in a way and create national plans that they can help implement, whether or not there's national leadership.
Are there any questions or comments? We just threw you into a kind of intense experience, and yeah, anything you'd like to say? Yes, sir. What a great question. One of the things that we're most concerned about regarding the oceans is ocean acidification. And one thing that's remarkable about meeting the Paris goals is the incredible large impact on ocean acidification. Notice the business as usual future for ocean acidification out to 2100 is the black line, going all the way down to a pH 7.75 or so. However, if we follow the scenario that you just created together, you see pH falling, and it's remarkably responsive to a change in the emissions. And it levels out here at a much, much lower level of acidity. So this is one of those impacts that actually gets much, much better. That, of course, is happening because a lot of these removals of carbon dioxide, the silver line at the bottom, half of that is going into the oceans. So when you have less emissions, ocean acidification is not quite as bad. It's something that's much better. The other comments or questions that you have? Yes, ma'am. Hold on one second.
Asking people to become vegans. Do you have that on your indices?
What a good question. So right now, the question is, she has a friend that's saying we should become vegans. Eating vegetarian would mean less emissions, particularly of methane. And so it is one of the gases that's being modeled. So when you said we're going to peak emissions in 2020, that would be peaking emissions of those methane gases as well. And so that's part of the math here. And that's one of the ways to deliver upon the pledge that you just mentioned.
Yeah, I can actually.
Yeah, go
So
ahead.
actually, one of our winning proposals several years ago was about this. It was a campaign for Meatless Mondays and those kinds of initiatives. And the results were pretty impressive about if it actually were implemented at scale. And that analysis on the individual action level is something that actually happens on Climate CoLab. And so then how all the actions go together, we work with Climate Interactive to assess those. But you can actually look on Climate CoLab and search for some options, different strategies, proposals that people have submitted on how we can promote veganism or vegetarianism and what kind of impact that might have on greenhouse gas emissions. Yeah.
If we can also encourage our children to start vegan, it will really help.
And actually,
Yes, sir.
Sorry, I'll just take another quick answer to say that's also being thought of and added into our climate smart ag model, particularly around the transition of social dietary preferences, which is important, and livestock emissions.
Yes, sir.
The last one from me is winning proposals. Are they, how does one access them so that we can have learning experiences
Yeah.
all those rather than to recycle, to do them over and again.
Yeah, I appreciate that. That's a great question. And actually, can I just go to a different website here? I'll show you what the Climate CoLab website looks like. And we actually, it's very important for us that there's a lot of transparency in all of these processes. So here's our platform right here. And I'm going to take you to one of our contests, to our contest page. And you can see all the contests. We just ended a whole number of contests. You see all the other contests that we have here. And then we have a series of workspaces where people can work on proposals outside of the contest period. So one of our most popular contests is in public attitudes and behavior. So how do you actually change the way that the public thinks about and responds to climate change? And so inside of this workspace, right now we have 9 people who are working on things, but you can access all of these. I'm not even logged into the platform right now, but you can see all of the different suggestions that are here. And then during a contest period, this is not in a contest period, so it hasn't been assessed yet, but you would actually be able to see the results of the assessment. You can see what experts have said about these proposals. You won't see it here because it hasn't been assessed, as I said, but when I click the impact tab, you'll be able to see what the potential impact on greenhouse gas emissions will be. You could see what other people have said about the proposal. So all of this is completely open. And if you want to register for Climate CoLab, you can start typing in comments, you can respond to people, you can send them a message on the platform and say, hey, I want to collaborate with you on this project, or how can you bring this project to my community and to my country? So that's what's possible. That's what we're doing. Thank you.
All right, everybody. As I said at the start, decision makers are not going to solve this problem, nor scientists, nor any of those groups alone. Instead, we don't need 10,000 professional experts right now. We really need to empower 1 billion around the world who are 1 billion passionate and empowered amateurs. So please be 40 of those amateurs over the rest of your week and on to your future. Thank you very much. Please join us for refreshments around the corner. It's been a pleasure.